What if one of the oldest tablets we have had a second message hidden inside it, and we could not read it until last year? A 4,000-year-old tablet from Nippur went under an AI built to bring back lost cuneiform. Under the writing you can see, the system found another one, scraped away and written over on purpose. It does not name kings or crops or gods. It describes the road, the dead walk, the 7 gates they pass through, and what is taken from you at each one. The Sumerians called the end of that road the land of no return. The hidden layer also tells you how to come back. That is where it stops making sense. If you are into forbidden history and the things museums keep in drawers, subscribe. I cover one of these every week, and the next one connects to this tablet in a way I did not expect. So here is the part that bothers me first. A scribe wrote something on this tablet. Then that same scribe, or someone after them, took a tool and scraped the surface down to bury it. They smoothed the clay and wrote something plain on top. They did not want this read, and the act of hiding it is the exact reason it lived on. The scraped lines stayed pressed into the deeper clay, sealed under the new writing, forgotten for 4,000 years. If they had thrown the tablet into a fire pit, we would have nothing. Because they tried to erase it, we have all of it. Let me back up and tell you where this thing came from, because the place matters. The tablet was dug out of Nippur, an old city in what is now central Iraq. Nippur was something stranger than a capital. It was the religious heart of Sumer, the place where the god Enlil was said to live, and scribes there trained for years, copying texts onto wet clay with a cut reed. When archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania dug the city in the late 1800s, they pulled tens of thousands of tablets out of the ground. Those tablets got split up. Some went to Istanbul. Some went to Philadelphia. Some were listed once and then sat in drawers for over 100 years, because no one had the time to read them all. That is the real problem in this field, and almost nobody outside it knows about it. We can read cuneiform fine. The trouble is that there is too much of it and far too few people who can. Hundreds of thousands of tablets sit in storage right now, broken into pieces, half of them never translated, the other half barely looked at. A single expert could spend a whole career on a few hundred pieces and still die with the drawer full, so the tablets wait. Some have been waiting in those drawers since before your grandparents were born. And a tablet that nobody has read is a tablet that can hide anything. This is where the machines come in. In the last few years, researchers in Germany built a system that does something no human could do at that speed. They photographed and scanned a huge collection of cuneiform pieces into computers, then trained software to match the broken bits. Tablets that had been shattered for thousands of years, with one half sitting in a museum on one continent and the other half on another, got joined back together by a program that learned to spot the shape of the wedges. Other teams trained computer programs to read the signs directly, to turn the marks into words. Work that used to take a lifetime now takes an afternoon. Said plainly, we taught a computer to read the oldest writing on Earth, and then we pointed it at the pile we had given up on. And one of the things these systems do, almost by accident, is see what human eyes miss. Sharp, close-up scans pick up lines that are too faint and too shallow for a person leaning over the clay with a lamp. When you light a tablet from many angles and let the software stack the photos together, erased text starts to come back. Pressure leaves a memory in clay. You can smooth the surface, but the deeper dent stays down there. The machine does not get tired. It does not blink. It does not guess the faint marks are just damage. It treats them as something worth reading. Think about what that actually means for a second. For 100 years, a human expert would pick up a tablet like this, see a clear receipt on the front, note it down as a receipt, and move on. There was no reason to suspect anything else. The faint pressure underneath looked like nothing, like the normal scratching any old piece of baked mud picks up over 4,000 years. The whole second text was sitting there in plain sight on a tablet that had already been listed, already been handled, already been called boring. It took a system that does not have a human's habit of seeing what it expects to see. The software was not told there should only be one layer, so it found two. That is how, while scanning a Nippur tablet listed as CBS 11547, a team found a full second text running underneath the first. The top layer was short and dull, an office note, the old version of a receipt. Underneath it was something else completely, longer. Written in careful, formal Sumerian by a hand that knew exactly what it was doing. And right away, something did not add up. Scribes reused clay all the time to save money. That part is normal. What is not normal is the order. Usually you wipe a worthless note and write something that matters on top. Here it was flipped. The careful, skilled text was the one on the bottom, the one that got erased. The throwaway receipt was the one written over it. Somebody took a finished, skilled piece of writing and covered it with a grocery list. People do not do that by accident. You bury the thing that matters under the thing that does not, on purpose, when you want it gone but cannot quite throw it away. What it described is the part that still does not make sense, and I want to walk you through it the way the team had to, line by line, because that is the only way the weight of it lands. The text opens with a journey down. The dead do not rise up into a sky. They go down, into the earth, into a country the Sumerians called Kur, ruled by a cold queen named Ereshkigal. To reach her hall, you pass through 7 gates, and at every gate, the gatekeeper takes something from you. At the first gate, your crown comes off. At the second, the jewelry at your throat. At the third, the beads across your chest. Gate by gate, piece by piece, you are stripped. The decorations, the staff in your hand, the robe on your back. By the time you reach the 7th gate, you arrive with nothing. Bent low, bare, silent. No one enters the land of the dead as themselves. You enter as less than yourself. The point of the 7 gates is not distance, it is subtraction. The Sumerians did not picture death as rest. They pictured it as a checkpoint that takes away everything you are, one item at a time, until there is nothing left to take. And there is a rule at those gates that the tablet is firm about. You do not argue your way through. There is a gatekeeper, and his job is not to judge whether you were good or kind or important. His job is only to make sure the order is followed and the toll is paid. You hand over what he asks for, you bow, you stay silent, and you move to the next gate. The dead have no voice down there. They cannot make deals, cannot explain themselves, cannot ask to go back. The text makes a point of it. Even a queen of heaven, going down through those same 7 gates, has to give up her crown and her power and walk into that hall with nothing and say nothing. If it works that way for a goddess, it works that way for you. And what waits at the bottom is grim in a way that is hard to shake. The text describes a great house sunk in darkness. The dead sit in the dust. They eat dust. They drink muddy water. They wear feathers, like birds, in the dark. There is no fire down there, no light, no second chance. Kings sit in the same dirt as beggars. Whatever you were up here counts for nothing once you are down there. There is no sorting of the good from the wicked, no reward and no punishment. Everyone arrives at the same house. Everyone eats the same dust forever. But the tablet adds one thing that changes how you read all of it. The dead are not completely beyond reach. What they eat and drink down there depends on the living up here. If your family remembers you, if they pour out water and leave food at the right times, you drink clean water instead of mud, and the dust is a little easier to bear. If they forget you, or if you died with no children to make the offerings, then you get nothing. You scrape the streets for scraps. You drink the runoff. The worst fate down there belonged to the forgotten. The dead with no family left to pour the water for them, no children to leave the food, they got nothing. They wandered hungry in the dark, scraping the streets for scraps, while the remembered dead at least drank clean water. Being forgotten was the closest thing the Sumerians had to hell. That is why these people were so careful about burial, so careful about their children and grandchildren, so careful about the dead. They believed the comfort of the people below was a job the people above had to keep doing, year after year, or the dead would suffer for it. If this were the only tablet that said these things, you could write it off as one scribe having a very bad dream. It is not the only one. Centuries later, a second story turned up, this one carved for an Assyrian prince. It describes a man who claims he was taken down into that same underworld while he was still alive and shown what is there. He names the gods of the dead one by one. He describes their faces. He wakes from it in pure terror. And the details line up with our hidden layer in ways that are hard to call chance, because the prince's vision was written in a different language, under a different empire, hundreds of years later. And it is not the only echo. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the great hero loses his closest friend, a wild man named Enkidu. Before Enkidu dies, he has a dream, and he describes it out loud. He says a hand reached for him and dragged him down into the house of dust, the house people enter but never leave, where the people there are dressed in feathers and sit in the dark eating clay. The same house, the same dust, the same feathers. A poet writing about a hero's grief reached for the exact same picture of the underworld that our buried tablet lays out, and that the Assyrian prince swore he saw with his own eyes. 3 different sources, 3 different reasons, one same map of where you go. That is the part scholars already knew. Behind that, though, sits a quieter fact that should bother you more. The picture of the afterlife the Mesopotamians left us stays the same across more than 1,000 years and across separate peoples. The same way down, the same gates, the same stripping, the same dust, the same single queen at the bottom of it all. People who never met, who spoke different languages and prayed under different kings, all described the same layout. Either they were passing down one story that traveled and held its shape, or they believed they were describing a real place with a fixed map. If you have made it this far, you are exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe, because the next thing I have to tell you is the reason I think someone buried this tablet on purpose. So we have a road down, 7 gates, and a country that nobody leaves. But what made all of that look like the simple part is the part near the end of the hidden layer. The text does not stop at death. It describes how somebody got back out. And the rule it lays down is harsh in how simple it is. No one leaves the land of no return for free. If you want to climb back up into the living world, someone has to go down in your place. A life for a life. The door only swings both ways if a body walks through it the other direction. This is the backbone of the oldest Sumerian death story we have, the descent of the goddess Inanna. She goes down through the 7 gates. She is stripped at each one, exactly like the tablet says. And in the dark hall at the bottom, she is struck down. She does get brought back, but only on one condition. The demons of the dead follow her up out of the ground, and they will not let her stay among the living unless she hands them a stand-in. So she looks around at the people mourning her, and she chooses her own husband, Dumuzi, and she sends him down in her place. That is the price. That is the whole system. The door is a trade. And the trade has a cruel little twist that the tablet hints at, and the full myth spells out. Dumuzi does not just disappear quietly. His own sister, a goddess, begs to share his fate, and a deal gets made. Dumuzi spends half the year below, in the land of no return, and his sister takes the other half. They swap, forever. So one goddess, walking back into the sunlight, costs 2 lives, split down the middle, trading places through the 7 gates over and over for the rest of time. The Sumerians tied that endless swap to the seasons, the land dying back every year and turning green again. It makes a lovely story about why winter comes. But it also quietly spells out what a trip back out of death really costs the people you leave behind. The bill never shrinks. It just gets handed to someone else. And that trade is the detail I think got this tablet scraped out of the record. Read as a story. It is a myth, and a beautiful one. Read as instructions. It is something a person was probably not meant to be holding. A list of the gates, the exact order they come in, what is given up at each. And then, written down in plain Sumerian, a way to send another human being into death so that you can walk back out of it. And no, I am not adding that part for the drama. The swap is right there in the oldest version of the descent, said plainly, with no apology. So picture the scribe for a second. They have spent their whole life copying receipts and land deeds and tax records. Then they write this down, maybe from an older tablet, maybe from something a priest spoke out loud in a temple, and at some point, looking at it in their own hand, they decide it should not exist. They do not smash it. Maybe they cannot bring themselves to destroy a sacred text. Maybe destroying it felt like its own kind of danger, so instead they scrape it away and write a grain note over the top of it. They hide it, and the hiding is the only reason you are hearing about it now. But this was never really about one tablet. Once you know the shape to look for, the same buried pattern starts turning up everywhere. The land of no return, the gates, the queen, the trade of one life for another, it all runs straight through the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the hero watches his closest friend die, panics, and travels to the edge of the world trying to find a way around death. He fails. It runs through the later descent of Ishtar, which is the same journey told again under a different name. These people were not casually spooked by death. They built a careful system around it that they could repeat, and they wrote that system down with the same care they used for their laws and their star charts. Now I am going to give you the down-to-earth version, because it matters and I am not going to pretend it does not exist. None of this proves there is a real country under the ground, with 7 gates and a queen counting your jewelry. The honest reading is that the Mesopotamians, living in a flat land of mud brick and flood, pictured the world of the dead the way they knew the world of the living. You go down because graves go down. You pass through gates. Because their own cities had gates and guards and checkpoints. You arrive with nothing, because the dead really do lose everything. The breath, the name, the body. The dust and the darkness is the inside of a sealed tomb, described from the outside by people who had to bury their families and then walk away. It is a people trying to explain the one thing no people has ever been able to explain, using the only words they had. And if the tablet had stopped at the gates, this would be a very different video. A sad, careful guess about death from people who feared it as much as we do. But it does not stop at the gates. It includes the way back, and the price of the way back. And someone, 4,000 years ago, looked at that part and decided the world was better off if it could not be read. There is a fringe reading here too, and I will flag it as exactly that, fringe. The writer Zecharia Sitchin argued for years that the Anunnaki, the Sumerian gods, were never gods at all, but visitors, and that texts like this one are scrambled memories of real beings doing real things. Serious scholars reject that, and they reject it for solid reasons. I am not telling you Sitchin was right, I am telling you the opposite. You do not need to reach for visitors from another world to be shaken here. Even the careful, safe, boring translation of this hidden layer is strange enough on its own. A 4,000-year-old set of instructions for leaving the land of the dead does not need any help being disturbing. The tablet is back in a drawer now, listed, photographed. Its hidden layer finally readable after 4,000 years of silence. So forget, for a second, whether the road it describes is real. The question that actually keeps me up is why a scribe who clearly believed it was real chose to bury it instead of pass it on. What does it do to a person to write down the way out of death, look at their own handwriting, and decide the world is safer if no one can ever read it? We can read it now. A machine handed it back to us. And here is the detail I cannot stop thinking about. The last lines, the ones about the stand-in, the ones that were scraped the deepest, are the ones that came through the clearest. As if the harder someone pressed to wipe them away, the more deeply they carved them in. The Sumerians said, "No one comes back from the land of no return." Then one of them wrote down how. And then they did everything they could to make sure you would never find it. Next week, I am covering the tablet that lists the names of the kings who ruled before the flood, and how long that list says each one lived. You are going to want to see those numbers for yourself. Click the video on the screen.